The Five Rings Podcast with Dwayne Rollins and Kevin Laramie on the Sport Podcasting Network. Follow us and listen to us live on Twitter at Five Rings Podcast and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network for more content.
And good day, good night. Welcome to the Five Rings Podcast. I'm Kev Laramie. I'm joined by Dwayne Rollins as always. And today we are back with you to talk about the Summer Games, the Olympic Games. They're beginning tomorrow. We'll preview our favorite moments upcoming, of course, today. And we are back with you for the daily grind of the next few weeks. But first, Dwayne, how have you been?
I'm pretty good, Kevin. If you know me, you know that my favorite event in the world, in all of sports, is not a World Cup. It is not a Euro. It is the Summer Olympics, specifically the Summer Olympics. So the fact that we had to wait an extra year has sort of dampened the enthusiasm a bit. But I found myself, I've already watched 8 hours of coverage.
Yeah, he's basically watched everything that happened so far. So we can break down the soccer game later on Soccer Today. Of course, Germany lost to Brazil. We had some women's soccer yesterday. It was great. Canada got a draw, and we also actually lost, and we saw, of course, was it a draw? I forgot. It's been too long already.
On 1-1.
Exactly,
Yep.
That's what I thought. The U.S. lost 3-0 yesterday against Sweden. That's why I was confused. But, all that, it started. And it has started. The Olympic ceremonies, the opening ceremonies are tomorrow, Dwayne. They're at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday. But it already has begun. Why not just have, the ceremonies on a Wednesday night and then get it over with?
If ever there was the opportunity to not have an opening ceremonies, it might have been this year. You can't really have the athletes march all that safely anyway. I like the pageantry. I enjoy an opening ceremony. I'm excited for it. I'm geared up for it, but it's going to be a different one tomorrow. That's sure.
Yeah, tomorrow's definitely going to be a different one. But we'll watch it. We'll see what happens. And of course, we're going to break down today what the Five Rings Podcast is. If you're brand new to us, well, welcome to the longest running Olympic podcast on the face of this planet. Well, it's a podcast. Is it really on the face of anything? Well, it's on this planet, Dwayne. We know that for sure. And we have been creating Olympic podcasts daily during Summer Games and Winter Games since 2014, since the days of Sochi. And now, Dwayne, we are doing our fourth Olympics together, and we're ready for the grind. And this podcast has a very different format than maybe what you're used to. We have, of course, the format inspired by the Olympics themselves. We have gold, silver, bronze medals that we award every day to our favorite, second favorite, and third favorite performance of the day, moment of the day, athlete of the day. Whatever we think is fitting in these categories, that's what we put on a daily basis. And over the years, we added more medals, Dwayne. We've added the Poutine medal, which rewards the best Canadian performance on that day. That is not one of the other medals. And also, over the years, we've added the Wood medal, which encompasses of anything we think is worthy of a negative mention. And it goes in our Wood category. I'm excited to do this all over again.
Yeah, it's very formulaic, but it works. I think it's a great way to cover these events. We have in the past had Five Rings running weekly between games. We've had to shelve that for work reasons. We're going to shoot that Patreon out to you a bunch of times during these broadcasts. So I'm sorry, not sorry about that. If you can give us enough, then maybe we'll do that in the lead up to Beijing. But exactly, the medals are our way of encapsulating what is such a massive event to give you the highlights from our perspective during the day. Now, we are Canadian, if you are listening from outside Canada. So we do have a slight Canadian focus, but we do also endeavor, Kevin, at least I do, to try and look beyond the Canadian stories, to look at the bigger story, world story. Now, Canada does better in the Olympics than they did 20 years ago. So we have a lot of good stories to talk about for the athletes in this country. But as I say, this is a global podcast that just happens to be based in Canada and has a poutine medal. Because,
exactly. Because why not? Imagine if we were actually doing podcasts in like 1976 in Olympics in Canada with like barely any Canadian doing anything anywhere. That was the dark ages of Canadian sports.
I would have been screaming about the women's 200-meter butterfly. I think it's 200. It might have been 100. It's butterfly regardless. And how all those cheating East Germans took what would have been a sweep by the Canadians off of the podium, and instead they finished 4th, 5th, and 6th. Anyway, that's what I would have been screaming about back then, because it was pretty clear that there was some
weird incentives to go faster that was present in their system.
Yeah.
Foreign bodies. Let's call it like that. Foreign bodies present in their system during the competition.
Yeah, and look, I suspect that during the next 17 days that we will, at some point in time, start to talk about performance-enhancing drugs, because that's just a part of it every games. And you don't want a lot of positive cases, but you don't want none either, because logically, someone knows there's cheating. If you're not catching any of them, then they're all slipping through in my mind. So
yeah, you're right. For sure, there's like just mathematics. There's like probably like one athlete in the whole bunch who's doing something not right. And you might be right on that. Wayne, let me crack my knuckles. All right, I think it's time. I think it's time we start. And usually we start with a negative. So let's start with the first wood medal of these Olympic Games. And it's, we miss you. The lack of fans in sports, sporting events, but especially at the Olympics. I've seen my fair share of soccer games without fans, and I've seen them at the Olympics. It's not too bad. But softball without fans, I can only imagine what pole vault will be without fans. Well, I guess it'll be similar to just watching a Diamond League, but it'll be different than watching Olympics for sure.
Yeah, the 100-meter final, when that hush goes over that crowd, is always one of my favorite moments in a 4-year period, right? Because it has to do with the buzz, and then the gun goes off and you hear all the clicks. Well, it used to be clicks, now they'd be silent, but you know what I mean.
you just see all everyone raise their phones.
Yeah, exactly. But it's always such an epic thing, and that's not going to happen. Look, that's the other side of this too, of this wood medal, is that the IOC has kind of been a bit heavy-handed trying to force this onto Japan. Now, Japan signed the contract, and that's what you have to do when you become a candidate city, a bid city. You agree to the provisions that the IOC put in place. They're very prohibitive. They're very expensive. That is why more and more cities are pulling out of Olympic bids. And on the Five Rings Weekly, when we did that, we talked a lot about that.
Congratulations to Brisbane, by the way, 2032. Maybe we'll see you there. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. That's all 3 major cities in Australia now hosted the Summer Games.
And that would be the only other country, the United States, to do so. The United States, of course, famously had Olympic Games in L.A., Salt Lake, and Atlanta.
St. Louis as well, too.
St. Louis, and that's right. That's why it's 3 Summer Games. You're right.
Yeah, congratulations there. But the IOC, and trying to be heavy-handed and force politicians to go visit there, and also they had to reverse course on the U.S. women, and others were kneeling at kickoff, like you're seeing around soccer games all over the world. And the IOC commanded that no images of that be shown. So, just that heavy-handed IOC-ness. Like, I love the Olympics so much. And I feel so guilty about that sometimes, because the IOC is so bad. And I know that. And it's something that I will always struggle with a bit. But
it's a love that doesn't love you back. It always hurts. But, it's hard to say no. Also, are we Olympic addicts?
Well, I am,
yeah. I can't say no to that. I've been excited and giddy just because I knew this show was going to start. But I agree with you. And when we say the handling of it by the IOC, it's also the wishy-washy, what just last few weeks have been, how difficult it has been. And on the athlete perspective, all accounts that I've heard from the personal friends that I have that have gone to Tokyo, from the media side. Of course, we all know colleagues that are actually traveled to Japan and they're now for media. And it's been some delays for the media part. Usually for the athlete, it's very seamless and goes very well. It's a bit longer, but it's going to be very different accommodation, very different experience for the athlete. For the perfectionist in the world that loves to focus just on the actual performance, that will be amazing. But the experience of the Olympics, for sure, is not going to be the same for the athletes and for the fans or for just the TV viewers.
Yeah, I feel really bad for the Japanese people because, we here remember Vancouver and how exciting that was for the country that we're in and what it mattered. And even if you we don't live anywhere close to Vancouver. If you don't know the geography, it's like a 7-hour flight. So, it's not that I was whipping out to watch games, but at the same time, you still felt a national pride about that. And that's all been wiped off for circumstances completely outside their control. And I feel for that. Now, whether these games can go off safely, I tend to think they will. Couple things on that. First off, we're in the lead up to a games. Kevin, can you remember an Olympic Games where there weren't doom and gloom articles being written the entire lead up to it? Like every Olympics, it's the same thing.
Yes, it's the same thing. It's just a bit different topics, but it's still similar headlines. You're right.
Yeah, it's all the doom and gloom. Also, I wrote an article on this yesterday for my work, and I'll give you some concrete numbers. Japan currently has 2.1 cases per 100,000 people of COVID-19, and from that number, they have declared a state of emergency. As a comparison, Great Britain is a little over 60 right now per 100,000, and the United States is around 8.5. So it has a much lower incident rate of these two major countries that are wide open again.
Well, I would probably say the declaration of a state of emergency is done in a preemptive fashion. It is done in the fact knowing that, there's going to be protocol is not respected for sure somewhere in the whole sea of people for the Olympics. Even in bubbles, there's going to be breach of bubbles, right? So knowing that, I think it's a preemptive decision to be because what the state of emergency does, it is allocate funds differently, right? So it's more politic and more of a financial decision than literally state of emergency. It actually will permit some hospitals have better funding and redirect nurses and doctors that are allocated, example, to very minor aesthetic surgery, and then they'll be deployed for the pandemic reasons. So there's that aspect that I can understand. But of course, you have to also see the possibility of maybe including a few more fans or the possibility of or something. But of course, I think it's, when you're trying to please everyone or when you're trying to be fair to everyone, at the end of the day, you're fair to no one. Yeah. And I think that's a bit of what's happening.
No such thing as fair during a pandemic, right?
Exactly. But maybe the nicest, the want or the will to be fair actually impeded people here in the decision-making process.
Yeah. Quickly, a couple other numbers. $800 million is what they're estimated they will lose because these games cannot host fans. But you can't measure, as I said, the sort of, this is a Five Rings staple statement, I'm going to say. I'm going to talk about hard benefits and soft benefits, Kevin. And if you don't know what those concepts are, a hard benefit is something that you can legitimately point to and say that happened because. So you're looking at infrastructure improvements, you're looking at stadium, you're looking at money that you do make from business. A soft benefit is more the good feeling that you have. Those are gone. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's definitely unfortunate. So this was our first wood medal of Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympic Games. Of course, they really start tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll have our opening ceremony, breakdown, and review. And then tomorrow night, it really gets going from our point of view on the eastern coast of North America. Dwayne, let's move to a more positive medal to continue. Let's move to our poutine medal, which is awarded to our favorite Canadian, and it all starts with maybe our favorite athlete in the whole world. Evan Dunphy, race walker for Canada. He's done amazing performances over the last few years, and we're looking forward to seeing him in Sapporo on August 5th at 4:30 p.m. our time for the 50-kilometer race walk. One of my favorite events at the Olympics. For some reason, Dwayne, I'm more of an endurance athlete than I am a sprint athlete, okay? I'm 5'8", some say. I would say 5'9", and I would be generous. I'm a bit chubby, but I love my endurance sports. I used to cycle, and my favorite ride in the whole world was 125 kilometers in one day when I was not ready to do so. But you find something deep within you in these sports. You find something on the border of consciousness and greatness. And that is what Race Walk is, and I'm looking forward to August 5th.
Yeah, and Evan, if you don't know, is the bronze medalist of the in the distance. This is also the last time the IOC will be having a 50K walk, and which is very controversial. Has to do with basically them not being able to sell tickets for it. So that's not something that the athletes are very happy about, and that's one of the reasons that, like, we've gotten to know Evan a little bit over the past 3 years. He's been a guest on the show several times. I talked to him like back channel on Twitter a few here and there when I want to know something or just see how he's doing. So, friend is a strong word, but it's certainly an internet friend, right? And have
an acquaintance for sure.
Yeah, and when you know someone and when you've got to know someone a little bit, I've never had that before, really. So it's kind of neat to have someone that you have a legit fondness to as a person. And he's and it's beyond the athlete. Like, obviously it's awesome that he's like a world class, that he could win the gold medal potentially. That's awesome. But what makes Evan so wonderful in my mind is how sincere he is, how ethical he is. He is about clean sport. He's about fighting for the athlete's rights. He doesn't back down. He just, if you don't know about him, find out, like, educate yourself a little bit. He is a first-rate guy, and I could see him being very successful in the amateur sport world if he wanted to stay on after he retires. I don't know if he does.
And like an athlete representative, or even maybe revolutionize the IOC. But no, you're right, and I looking forward to seeing him perform, because we've seen the growth of him from the beginning of, we interviewed him back in the Rio days, right? And after Rio, I think it was actually the lead up to Rio, we first started talking to him when Russia had some athletes that were banned and still training, and he found evidence, and he still has a blog, but his blog was starting back then, and he was keeping track of these things. So it's great to see also the behind the scene of a race walk, because it's really different than what you think, and it's unfortunate that it has, not that it's and made fun of, but it is, of course, one of the sports that is easily mocked over the past few decades. But it's such a difficult sport that has rules, and you have to execute things, and you have to do things properly. But then at the end of the day, it's extremely demanding, and the distance and all, it's a very different sport than just walking. You know what I mean?
Well, and trust me, Evan's split times and the other athletes around him in the 5K, 10K marks are going to beat you if you're listening to this.
Yes, and beat you while you run. So that's the thing.
That's what. Yeah, the motion of race walking is very challenging, and if you're just to someone out there that wants to start a fitness regime, there's nothing. I highly recommend speed walking as doing that, but you'll find out pretty quick that if you do what you're supposed to do, which is to always keep one foot on the ground, to lock your knees every stride, you're going to have that little waddle, and that's what people make fun of, but they shouldn't. It's just a technique, and it's he's great at it, and I'm very excited to watch that, and I'd love to see him win. But even if he doesn't, as I said, he's already represented.
He's already a winner in our hearts, but he has been for years, and he already performed well in the Olympics. That's just one day. But that day, on August 5th, once again, we will be paying attention and watching that whole race. That's how I love to watch it, because it's an endurance race is truly understood when you watch the whole thing and you understand the ebb and flow. And you understand that it's not necessarily how you start, but it's that tempo, it's that pace, and it's leaving everything out there. But having something left until the last footstep that you do, and then having nothing left, engaging that effort throughout the hours and hours of endurance is amazing. We're going to have a short break, Dwayne. When we come back, we'll give our bronze, our silver, and our gold medal of our preview show of events and competitions that we're looking forward to. Right back after this short break. And we're back on the Five Rings Podcast. Kev Laramie with Dwayne Rollins, as always. We'll be with you daily during the Olympic Games, talking about our favorite moments of the Olympics, and of course, breaking down all that's happening in the wonderful Summer Games. I'm really looking forward to the competitions and the Olympic ceremony tomorrow, Dwayne. When you think of Olympic ceremony, and just before we start giving our medal, what excites you about tomorrow's Olympic ceremony, if anything?
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to... I guess you don't know. They've had to make some creative changes in the last few days leading up to this. So I'm curious to see how that impacts it. I'm curious to see what an opening ceremony looks like that is entirely for a TV audience. Now,
we've seen a Euro one that left me with hunger still in me, I have to say.
Yeah, the opening ceremonies are always hit and miss. It depends on your taste, right? Like, art is subjective. Like, I loved London. It was my favorite opening and closing ceremonies I've ever seen. I mean, how can you not love the closing ceremonies? Yeah. The Spice Girls.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you had a Spice Girl on top of a bus. What more London would you want?
Exactly.
And they gave you what you want, what you really, really want. So
precisely, and they had James Bond parachuting.
The Queen.
Yeah.
Well, of course, they have to change some of that ceremony because of the artistic director of that opening ceremony has been fired over the last day, because when he was younger in 1998, I believe, he was part of a comedy company that made fun of the Holocaust, and rightfully so now is not part of this. And it's been a few changes now. It's the second change for the artistic direction of this ceremony. These games will be remembered as a difficult organization for Tokyo.
100%, and that, as we said, is not really within their control. I'm sure Tokyo would have held a wonderful games, and that's why it's a real shame. The Japanese public are notoriously good at cheering. They do demonstrations, and they're very passionate for their country. So it would have been really, really awesome to see them as a host country, and I will be very curious to see whether, without the home crowd pushing them along, as a host country, whether they might not slip a little bit. Certainly, I've watched the Canadian women play Japan in the women's soccer tournament, and they didn't really look like a host team in that. They've done okay on the softball and baseball side so far, but those sports are there, so it'll be interesting to watch that play out.
I'm looking forward to the Budokan, because you know what, Dwayne, Ric Flair fought there before. He fought Inoki there. And the Budokan is a famous place in combat sports, in wrestling, in sumo, but especially in multiple events over the decades and decades that happened there. Concerts too. Bob Dylan famously played at the Budokan, and the Karate Championships will take place at the Budokan, which leads us, Dwayne, to our first bronze medal of these games. Let's talk about of course, let me just get the right. Here you go. This is the decathlon, Dwayne. Men's decathlon. Damian Warner. Damian Warner is Canadian world champion. Is he still the reigning defending world champion? I believe so at the decathlon. Just don't take my word for it.
He did win the world championship in Qatar.
Exactly. So don't take my word for it. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to decathlon, but I'm looking forward to watching it and to see this athlete, maybe the best, most rounded athlete in Canada, one of the best in the world, go for gold on August 3rd. That's when it starts. It's a 2-day event, and it's going to be really interesting. Decathlon, one of the most fascinating events in the entire Olympics.
No, for sure. And look, I am particularly interested in watching it because of Warner possibility at gold. He has been in several games. His improvements, he improves each time, and if he's, this is probably it for him. So it will be exciting to see whether he can compete at the top level again and get on that podium. At the World Championship we talked about last year, he surpassed all of his old rivals, but a young guy nipped him. So it's going to be a challenge, but it will be intriguing to watch. And but more, I just wanted this included because it's just the multi-sport events are the epitome of what the Olympics are.
Mm-hmm. It's true, though. It's to designate that's the reason of being, all right? And la raison d'être, Wayne, if I want to say my French word of the day, la raison d'être, the reason of being or existing is to determine who has the best athlete.
100%. Yeah, and just to summarize what I was saying there are 2 events on the track and field side of things that I will absolutely circle and watch them with very strong eyes, and that is the heptathlon, decathlon, which we're talking about the decathlon in this particular case, but you could add the hep as well for the women.
By the way, there should be a decathlon. Why is it different? Come on. There's let's face it. There's still a few wayward thinking people in the wrong places that think that women can't do the same as men, so that they have to be different. So,
yeah, what I've heard is the reason they're resistant now, and whether it's an excuse or not, I don't know, is that they think that it would upset the competitive balance if they were to allow, or if they were to expand to.
It's easy, and sorry, I don't want to cut you off or go on a rant, but say, okay, in 2 years it changes. You got 2 years to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's
train. You've never done. Okay, well, you got 2 years to do that sports now, and if you don't, well, if you don't adjust to the time will pass you by.
When I ran track when I was young, I ran track till I was 14. It hurt too much, so I stopped. To be blunt, but anyway, I was on the track team the year that the triple jump became eligible for females. So it's not that far on when we were living in a world where women couldn't triple jump for some reason because they thought, well, I know what the reason was. They thought it might hurt their over. I kid you not. So yeah, a little enlightenment there, people.
People. Men were stupid oftentimes in the past. Men are oftentimes stupid. I think we can stop there. I don't need to say a tense there.
Fair enough. Final thought on it. The other event, of course, that I've already mentioned it once, is that 100-meter final. And again, both men and women. It's fastest man, fastest woman in the year. Every year that the female competition checks out, I pray and hope that they wipe that record off, the 30th record in sport. I'll say that out loud because you can't defame the dead.
Yes, of course.
Anyway.
All right. Where were we?
Yeah, we're talking. Well, I'm ranting about FloJo, so that's just par for the course.
Okay, good. Well, that's good. So Damian Warner on August 3rd, that's when it starts, the decathlon, and we'll keep a close eye on that competition. Well, Lloyd and I together will watch pretty much all the Olympics, so we'll figure out how we break down everything on a daily basis. But we're looking forward to that second week of the Olympics, where athletics. I love that it's athletics now. Forget the track and field. We call it athletics.
Yeah, well, the rest of the world does. So.
Well, exactly. So, and in French too. So.
Yeah, it's football, soccer in many ways. But although that debate annoys me as a full-time soccer guy. It's like, whatever, just shut up.
I know. I feel the same way, and it is. Anyways.
Call it what you want. I'm gonna rotate it how I say it, and I use the avatar when I'm talking about it on Twitter to avoid the entire issue.
That's you know what? That's a good idea. All right, I think it's time we move on to our silver medal, and that is, of course, the new sports. 4 new sports will debut in Tokyo 2020: skateboarding, karate, sport climbing, and surfing. In sport climbing, there's a few declination of this too. There's speed climbing, bouldering. There's a couple of different events happening. Surfing will be interesting. Skateboarding is really catching your attention for these Olympics, Dwayne.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see skateboarding in there because I've always felt, and if you go back into our archive, we talked about this a couple of years ago when I said what sport should be added. Skateboarding was my pick. It is such a popular activity all around the world. It is going to attract young viewers just in the same way that slope style and stuff on the winter side does. So I just think it was an absolute enlightened way to put it in. And there are some people out there that are going to say, well, it's counterculture and skateboarding is a crime, not a pastime. There's a T-shirt that I saw, right? Like they embraced that a little bit.
What is this, 1990?
Yeah, yeah, kind of. But speaking of 1990, where I was going with this is Tony Hawk is over there on the TV broadcast, and he's taking photos and throwing them back for people to look at, and he's like, skateboarding in the Olympics, ... Good to me. Sounds good to me. And if Tony Hawk's okay with it, I think we all should be okay with it.
Yeah, Tony Hawk had a good last couple of years. The releasing of his game and a different platform. It's good. It's good for the bank account. Tony Hawk loves the fact that skateboarding has a bigger platform because he personally will benefit from that.
Yeah, he also on his 50th birthday he did a 1080.
I know, and he landed it, and I saw that video, and he's like, "What? First of all, Tony Hawk is 50. Oh my, okay, thank you. I don't need to be reminded that I have white hair coming through my temples. Also, Tony Hawk is 50. Jeez.
Yeah, well, he's a 50 and he's still could board, but when he landed, I found it quite charming, that video. Actually, look it up if you have a chance. When he lands it, he's like very emotional, and he's like, "Well, that will be the last time I do that because my body's done." And to go out that way, it's amazing. It says a lot about the sport and what it people.
And you're right though. You land it, you're like, all right. I would probably be like, you know what? I'm never skateboarding again. Done. Like I've left the best way I could. I'm gonna step off the board. I'm gonna enjoy having less pain in my knees.
I've always said, Kevin, I only golf about twice a year. If I ever hit a hole in one, I'm walking off the course.
Okay, that's funny. You know the sports. You know Fortnite. You heard of Fortnite, right? So in about like 2017, a long time ago now, I played it for like a few days, and this one game, I was hitting in that bush. 3 of us left. I had a rocket launcher, and the 2 guys were fighting each other, and they got really close. I blew up both, and I won.
Oh.
I never played since. I'm like, you know what? I'm never gonna top this. I'm retiring my Fortnite career right here, right now. December 2017.
I played Fortnite for approximately 15 minutes once and was so confused by everything to do with
too much stimulus. Too many stimulus.
Like I land dead.
Who's shooting at me?
Jesus.
What would you think about esports or Fortnite at the Olympics?
All
right. You don't have to alienate our young audience right away. It's okay.
I'm an old man, so I have trouble conceptualizing esports as sports, but I understand that the world evolves, and that's what I'll say.
All right. I am interesting to see how surfing will turn out, of course. It's not like, it can't be just like the surfing that you see in the movies or in the Mavericks. You're chasing Mavericks. You're not in San Francisco, Well, maybe one day you can have these type of things, but of course that'll be depending of conditions and all for the surfing aspect, and we'll see how it actually turns out and what it looks like. To me, it'll be interesting climbing too. I'm really looking forward to karate. And of course, the kata karate might be a bit boring at the end of the day. But maybe after that, we'll have the closest thing to blood sport we'll ever see at the Olympics.
Yeah, the kata is the forms, correct?
Yeah, the kata is like I like the dance more. They're just
yeah,
exactly.
And that's massive to the spirituality of the sport too. So that's not dismiss it, but you're right. It's not going to translate to TV as well.
No.
Surfing,
Go ahead.
I'm a little worried about surfing from a TV perspective. You're going to have a real long lens, and hope that you can catch them on the waves. But I'll be curious to watch it out. I've watched a little bit of sport climbing last summer when I was stuck in my house. I pulled up all these World Cups to learn about how sport climbing worked, and I actually find it quite interesting. There are 3 disciplines. They're having a combined total, so it's how many points you get in the speed climb and the bouldering, and it's like just a standard, like how fast up the wall.
Yeah, the other one is a the speed climbing is a standard course.
Actually, it's how high you get up the wall.
Yeah, the other one's how I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets harder the further you go up. It's quite compelling. The speed stuff is amazing to watch. It's like a 100-meter sprint up.
And they do so in what, 7 seconds, 6 seconds? It's insane. They jump, they jump up on the wall. Like, insane.
Yeah, and bouldering, for those that don't know, there will be several different passages on a wall, and it's how much you can do in a set period of time. And there's smaller climbs, so they're set up so you finish them. So like if they fall off the wall, they just keep going on the same one until they get it, and then they move to the next one, and whoever gets the furthest along is going to get the point. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. It's always nice to see new sports come in, and these, I think the IOC has a reputation for being a little conservative sometimes. I think with the addition of surfing, skateboarding, and climbing, you have 3 sports right there that are pretty useful. Karate's, that's a nod to the host, and every time that the games have gone to Asia, they've added a martial arts, so I guess we're getting another one now too.
And I guess Wushu will be making his debut in Beijing, no? The winter one. I'm just kidding. Can you have a winter martial art? That would be awesome. Kind of get messy, on ice taekwondo. Gets a little bloody.
It's like the plot of Goon or something, isn't it? I don't know.
Pretty much. It is time, Dwayne. It is time. We are now talking about, yes, the gold medal of the day. Let's go and see what is the one competition, the one moment, the one athlete we're looking the most forward to seeing in these Olympics. And that is Simone Biles. Women gymnastics starts on day 2, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the subdivision, the apparatus qualification, and then seeing it all unfold and seeing Simone Biles dominate once again.
She's unworldly, like really, truly. And sometimes there's just athletes that just transcend the sport and the country and just become bigger than life, right? And I think even though she's tiny, I think she is huge. Incredibly athletic. She does stuff out there that I've never seen done before. She's moved the sport into a direction. I am very confident that she will be star of the game. She will probably walk out of there with 5 to 7 gold medals. And
yikes. Yeah, that's a lot, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, she could, like, that would be, I think there's 4 apparatus, so she could get 6, up to 6 gold medals. But
right, yeah, because a team, and then
7, because you get team and overall individual, and then the apparatus. So yeah, you could get 7. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's one of my favorite thing about the games is the gymnastics. I love gymnastics. Not that I could ever do so. I just remember breaking my pelvic bone once. I think it was more my coccyx because I did too many front somersaults. Well, it's not the type of somersault you think. It's just more like when you just roll. That's what I was doing too much in high school. But yeah, gymnastic could be a fun thing. But I think it's going to be amazing to see day one and day two. Of course, in day one, it's the men. Day two, it's the women. And that is fascinating to me. Just the strength of the men on the different apparatus, and then seeing the strength also in the woman and the vault. And I love the cheval d'arçon, the horse. It's so you need strong body and grace at the same time for your feet. Those are amazing, precise movement that you need to do, especially for the man horse. You want to keep maybe the thought of having child and children in your future, so you don't want to hit the things you don't want to hit on the handles. It's a lot more difficult and complex than it looks like.
Oh no, 100%. And look, not to make this about physicality, but look at the physiques of your average gymnast. They're nothing but muscle on their bodies, right? Like what they do is incredible, and what they do is very difficult on their bodies. So that's why, particularly the female side, where they start earlier, they end up retiring quite early generally. It should be fun though, and yeah. Also, like peripheral to that, I'm going to give a little nod to our girl Rosie.
The trampoline, of course, Rosie McLennan. She is the first ever gold medal of trampoline at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, and she'll be going for her third straight gold medal, which I do not believe has ever been done by a Canadian before. So that's something to watch.
Kaylee Humphries wanted to do that, and she didn't, and then she's not Canadian anymore in the bobsled world, so she's not going to do that. I want to give a nod to the 100-meter race. Andre De Grasse, will he go back to the heights of the past? That's a good question. He's in the top 5 of the contenders. Anyone but Gatlin is maybe my thinking. Sorry to my American fans. I am looking forward to seeing Noah Lyles in that competition. And also Johan Blake. Can he live with the legacy of Usain Bolt? And of course, the controversies of the past of his teammates also. That's also going to be a great competition, and hopefully our Canadian can go back to where he used to be.
And there's 2 Canadians that could potentially make the final, Brown as well.
Yes, don't sleep on Andre Brown.
Yeah, and the relay should be interesting if they could get the baton sorted out around the track, which is always the key with the
which is always like... It reminds me of free kicks in soccer, and sorry if we always bring things to soccer. That's what I do full time. I cover soccer. And, it's like set pieces. You don't practice the one thing that might actually kill you during the game. Like, I would say every freaking week, there's 5 days. Look, there's 7 days a week, and maybe you practice 6. One of these 6 is, today, we're practicing the baton. That's all we do.
Yeah. If you remember the last Olympics, going back a while, the Canadian relay 4x1 ended up crossing the line in 3rd place in the final. But then because they stepped on the line by like the tiniest of margins, had that taken away, and they were disqualified in that final, and it was a big heartbreak there for them. So that'll be interesting to see whether they're still as pedantic about the lines as they were in Rio. I suspect they will be, because once a rule gets in place, they have to enforce it at all costs. So anyway, yeah, no, everything's going to be fun. Like I could add 12 other sports in it. And I've enjoyed watching softball the last few days, and I never thought I'd do that. I obviously the Canadian
Sorry, I just want to say, Dwayne, full disclosure, 1 a.m., Dwayne's like, I never thought I'd be watching softball at 1 a.m., but here we are.
Yeah, well, and then I put the second game on too. Anyhow.
I thought I was a lot this morning watching 3 Olympic soccer games at once, but I guess not.
Yeah, no, I watched quite a few of the men's games last night, but the women's tournament is always a really intriguing and interesting storyline for me as well. I don't watch a ton of the men's soccer generally at the Olympics because I watch it every other day of the year for every other year. So I tend to take a bit of a break and maybe watch the final. But when it was on last night with nothing else against it, I'm going to watch the 5 rings wherever I can. So I did. And some interesting results out of the day one. I Mexico with a big marker against France, 4-1. That's probably your one of your big surprises of the day.
Yeah, and we'll have plenty of surprises for days to come. During tomorrow's the Olympic ceremony, and then we're gone. It's going. It's go time. For 2 weeks, Stuart and I will be with you daily, sometimes at the same time. Sometimes we'll have to manage with our daily life, which is always the case during an Olympic game. Thank you for being with us for the journey. Hope you're happy to have you back on your podcast application or on YouTube or anywhere you find your podcasts or on our website. Thank you for choosing the Five Rings Podcast. We're here daily to cover the Tokyo 2020 Summer Games. We're here to talk to you about all the sports you want to know about and the ones you want to discover. We're here to enjoy these games together. You can follow us on Twitter at Five Rings Podcast. You can subscribe to the show everywhere you find your favorite podcast. And of course, our YouTube page, youtube.com/sports podcasting network. Make sure you like. It's good for the algorithm. So like, and of course, subscribe to the channel. But also, until next time, for Dwayne Rollins, I'm Kev Laramie. We wish you an amazing Olympic Games.